If Daniel had not left the garage light on, I might never have found the phone. I only went out there to switch it off. It was a small thing, a habit from my father. Never waste electricity, Claire. Pennies become pounds. Pounds become security. The October air was cold as I stepped onto the concrete. The garage smelled like oil, dust, and the faint, sharp scent of his new cologne. The one he started wearing a few months ago without mentioning it. The light hummed overhead. I reached up to flick the switch, then froze. One of his tool drawers was hanging slightly open. Daniel is not careless. He folds his shirts by color. He straightens crooked photos on other people's walls. He tightens every lid, locks every door, closes every drawer. I did not plan to investigate. I only meant to nudge the drawer shut. When I pushed, something blocked it. A dull, soft thunk from the back of the metal tray. I frowned and pulled the drawer all the way out. A screwdriver rolled forward and hit my wrist. Behind the tray, wedged between the metal and the back panel, I saw a flash of black plastic. I bent down, heart starting to tap faster against my ribs. It was a phone, thin, modern, no case, no fingerprints. Daniel already had a phone, a very expensive one that never left his pocket. This was not that phone. I reached in, my fingers scraping metal, and worked it free. Dust streaked the screen. There was no lock screen photo, just a black reflection of my own face staring back at me. My first thought was stupid. Maybe it is an old phone. Maybe he forgot about it. Then the screen lit up in my hand. New message. The vibration buzzed against my palm so suddenly I almost dropped it. My thumb hovered, useless, while the preview flashed across the top. Did she sign the last papers? Yet we need her inheritance before we move. No emojis, no punctuation, no hesitation. The words hit me in stages. She. Papers. Inheritance. Move. I knew immediately who she was. The sender name at the top of the screen was short and familiar. Lena. For a second the garage shrank. The walls leaned in. The humming light became a roar in my ears. Lena was not some stranger. Lena was not a work colleague I had never met. Lena was my older sister. I stared at her name until the letters blurred. The air felt too thin. My hand shook so badly I had to set the phone down on the workbench to steady it. Daniel and I had only one set of papers in progress. The ones about my father's estate. The house he left me, the investments. The security that was supposed to keep me safe for the rest of my life. We had spent months hearing the same sentence from him. Trust me, Claire, I just want to make sure everything is protected. The phone buzzed again on the workbench. Another message slid onto the screen. Daniel, answer me. We cannot delay this much longer. I did not remember moving, but suddenly I was standing closer, leaning over the screen like it might vanish if I blinked. She had used his name. She was talking about my inheritance, as if it was a shared project. We need her inheritance before we move. My mouth went dry. A part of my brain tried to argue. There must be an explanation, a misunderstanding, legal language I did not know. Another part answered with a cold, clear voice I had never heard from myself before. Your husband has a hidden phone. Your sister is texting him about your inheritance. They are waiting for your signature. The phone buzzed a third time. Fine, ignore me. Just make sure she signs before Friday. I reached out and picked it up again. My reflection stared back at me in the glass. Same brown hair, same tired eyes. But something behind my eyes had changed. I pressed the side button, and the screen went dark. For the first time in our 14-year marriage, I did not feel like Daniel's wife. I felt like a target. And I promised myself one simple thing. They were not going to see me coming. I did not sleep that night. I went back into the house on autopilot, turned off the garage light, and walked through the kitchen as if nothing had happened. I put my phone on the counter. I put his hidden phone in the pocket of my hoodie. My hands were steady, my mind was not. The clock on the oven said 1847. Daniel would be home by 1930, he always was. Same train, same bus, same key in the front door. For 14 years, Daniel had been the one thing in my life I thought I could predict. We met when I was 26 and he was 28. He was the new analyst at the firm where I worked in London. I was already there, the reliable project manager who remembered deadlines and birthdays and how everyone took their tea. He was funny without being loud, confident without being arrogant. He stayed late to help me finish a report the week my father had his first heart scare. Go, he had said when he saw me checking my phone every 5 minutes. I can tidy this up. You should be with him. I had fallen a little bit in love with him before we even became offy. Sile. By the time we married 3 years later, I knew his favorite curry order, the way he triple-checked the locks at night, and the face he made when he was thinking hard about numbers. I also knew, or thought I knew, that he was honest. We did not have a dramatic marriage. There were no plates thrown, no wild makeups in hotel rooms. We had a life of shared calendars, Sunday walks in the park, arguments about silly things that ended with takeaway and a film. I liked that. I liked stable. After growing up with a salesman father who was always chasing the next deal, the next risk, I craved boring. Then my father died last year, and boring ended. He left me 3 things. The house I grew up in, a solid detached place on the edge of town in Surrey. A portfolio of investments he had built slowly over 30 years. And a letter that said, in his crooked handwriting, "This is for your security, Claire. Promise me you will never depend on anyone else to keep you safe." I had cried when I read it. Daniel had held me on the sofa while I did. "We will look after it," he said into my hair. "We will make sure it works hard for you." The first time he mentioned updating the legal documents, it made sense. "We should put everything in order," he said one evening after the funeral. "If anything ever happens to either of us, the other should not be stuck in probate for years. It is just sensible." I agreed. Sensible was a word that sounded like a warm blanket. We met with a solicitor. She wore a navy suit and had kind eyes. She explained wills and trusts and power of attorney in smooth, practiced sentences. My head spun a little, but I signed where she showed me. We left with a smart folder and the assurance that things were safer now. Months passed. I went back to work. I drove down to the Surrey house on weekends to air it out, to decide what to keep and what to give away. Daniel came sometimes. Sometimes he said he was too busy. Around the same time, he started changing in small ways. A new aftershave appeared on the bathroom shelf. When I asked, he said a colleague had recommended it. He started going to the gym more often, coming home later, shrugging off my questions with "big project, you know how it is." He upgraded his laptop, his watch, his clothes. He started paying more attention to my father's portfolio than I did. "You should not leave this much in cash," he said, scrolling through an online dashboard one night. "We could restructure things, make it more efficient. Tomorrow we can talk to someone about moving some of this." I was grateful at first. Money overwhelmed me, he understood it. He worked with it, I trusted him. The second time he mentioned more legal updates, I hesitated. "Didn't we already do all this with the solicitor?" I asked, flipping through our shared paperwork folder. "This is just a refinement," he said quickly. "The market changes. Rules change. It would be good to have more flexibility if anything happens. You know my colleague in compliance, he said it is mad not to do this." He smiled in that easy way that used to make me feel safe. Come on, Claire. You know I would never do anything to put you at risk. So I signed the next set of forms too. If there were red flags, I smoothed them down and folded them away. I told myself this is what married couples do. They plan for the future. The distance between us grew so gradually, I almost missed it. He started staying out later, then sleeping on the sofa because of his back. He traveled more for work. The kisses at the door before he left got shorter. The questions he asked me about my day became fewer. When I tried to raise it, he put his hands on my shoulders and said things like, I am just under pressure. It will calm down after this quarter. You know I love you. I believed him, or I tried to. Now, standing in the kitchen with his secret phone still in my pocket, the past year rearranged itself in my mind. The gym membership. The new shirts. The extra trips to Surrey, he had offered to take alone so I could rest. The urgency about the last set of documents. We need her inheritance before we move. My father's voice rose up from memory, sharp and clear. Never depend on anyone else to keep you safe. I had done exactly that. I had handed the keys to my security to a man who owned a second phone I was never meant to see. The front door clicked open at 1928. Right on time. Honey, Daniel called from the hall. Sorry, trains were a nightmare. Smells good in here. What are we having? My heart hammered against my ribs. I wiped my hands on a tea towel, forced my face into the shape it always took at this time of day. The loving wife, the stable one, the woman with no idea what her husband and her sister were planning. Pasta, I said, turning to face him, just reheating. His smile was easy, familiar. For a split second, I saw him as I always had, my husband, my teammate. Then I remembered the message. Did she sign the last papers yet? I smiled back, the expression feeling like a mask being lowered over my real face. 14 years of trust did not vanish in one moment. But they cracked. And once a crack appears, it never really stops spreading. Daniel kissed my cheek like he always did. Soft, familiar, practiced. If I had not seen that message, I might have leaned into him the way I used to. I might have asked about his day, his team meeting, the colleague he always complained about. Instead, I stepped back just enough that he did not notice. Or maybe he did. He looked at me for a second longer than usual, before heading upstairs to shower. As soon as he disappeared around the corner, my eyes went to his work bag. For 14 years, that bag had been as familiar to me as my own purse. Leather worn on one side, zipper a little stiff, the inside always a mess of receipts, pens, and charger cables. Tonight, it felt like something entirely different. A lockbox. A vault. A place where the truth might be hiding. But I did nothing. Not yet. Suspicion is loud when you first feel it. Your heart screams, your mind races, everything in you wants to run straight into the fire to see how bad the burn really is. But I forced myself to breathe. Nothing makes a guilty person retreat faster than a wife who suddenly acts different. I needed him calm. Predictable. Confident that I was still the woman who signed whatever he put in front of me. So I boiled pasta. I reheated sauce. I sprinkled cheese. I set the table. When Daniel came down, he was humming. A brand new habit. He never hummed before this year. He sat, ate, complimented the meal. Talked about the trains. Asked about my project at work. Everything felt normal on the surface. If anything, he was sweeter than usual. That made it worse. Guilty people try to soften the blow before they swing the knife. After dinner, he leaned back in his chair and stretched. Long day, he said. I might need to go in early tomorrow. James wants us all in for a pre-quarter review. Another new thing. Early mornings. Late nights. Meetings that always seemed to happen when I was not around. How is James these days? I asked, pretending casual interest. Daniel shrugged, same as always, annoying but harmless. Harmless. I remembered the message again. Did she sign the last papers yet? Whoever texted him, she was not asking about work. When Daniel stood to put his plate in the sink, his phone buzzed in his pocket. His real phone. The one I knew about. He glanced at the screen too quickly. Then put it face down. Another new habit. Everything okay? I asked. He nodded too fast. Just something from my brother, he said. His brother never texted him. They barely spoke once a month. Daniel always complained he was unreliable. But I only smiled and wiped the counter. After he went upstairs to get ready for bed, I stayed in the kitchen, hands flat on the cold surface, breathing slowly. My mind replayed the message on the hidden phone. Word for word. Tone for tone. Did she sign the last papers yet? We need her inheritance before we move. 3 words lit up in my mind like a warning flare. Her inheritance. A move. Last papers. My father had spent his life telling me to be careful with what I was given. Be smart. Be selective. Be slow. I had ignored him. Daniel had convinced me to sign documents I barely understood. Trust structures. Beneficiary revisions. Power of attorney updates. All of it disguised as protecting me, protecting us. But now I could see the pattern. Each update gave him a little more access. A little more control. A little more power. And now they wanted the last piece. My signature. The only thing standing between them, and everything my father left me. When I went upstairs, Daniel was already in bed with the lamp off. He lay there like a man who had worked a long, honest day. Like a husband who had nothing to hide. His breathing slowed. Became even. A steady. He fell asleep within minutes. I stood by the doorway watching him. 14 years beside this man. 14 years sharing mornings and winters, and holidays and worries. 14 years believing we were building a life together. Now I was beginning to suspect he had spent the last 2 of those years building a life without me. But it was not just the cheating. That hurt, yes. But betrayal is deeper when it hits where trust lives. He was not only planning to leave me. He was planning to take everything that was supposed to protect me after he left. The house. The investments. The accounts. The security my father worked for. I looked at the hidden phone in my hoodie pocket. Tomorrow I would open it. Tomorrow I would find the truth. All of it. Tonight, I slept next to my husband like everything was normal. Because if he even sensed that I knew something, he would destroy every piece of evidence before I could understand what they had planned. And I needed to understand. Because through the cracks in our life, I could see something terrifying forming on the other side. This was not just cheating. Not just an affair. Not just a bad marriage. It was a plan. A coordinated one. A betrayal with paperwork attached. And I was not going to be the woman who walked into their trap blind. Not anymore. I woke up earlier than usual the next morning. Not because of an alarm. Because of the phone. That hidden phone felt like a burning coal inside my drawer. Every minute I left it unopened, I felt the story tightening around me. Daniel was already downstairs making coffee. His morning voice traveled through the house like nothing was wrong at all. I grabbed the phone and locked myself in the bathroom. The mirror reflected a version of me that I had not seen in years. Not scared. Not heartbroken. Focused. The phone was still locked, but old habits came back to me. Daniel was predictable. He used the same patterns for everything. Same email password for 8 years. Same garage code since we bought the house. Same phone PIN until last month. I tried the old PIN anyway. 4 numbers. Muscle memory guided my thumb. The screen unlocked. I stared at it for a few long seconds, my pulse pounding in my ears. The home screen was bare. No background photo. No apps except the basics. But the real truth was in the messages. I opened the first thread. A name appeared at the top. Emily Carter. I knew hers. Not personally. But I knew hers. She worked at a real estate agency across town. She had been showing homes in our neighborhood for months. Daniel once mentioned she helped one of his coworkers find a new place. Now I understood why she was suddenly part of his vocabulary. The most recent message from her was short and deadly. Did she sign the papers? We need everything finalized before next month. My breath hitched. My hands tightened around the cold phone. I scrolled up. More messages. Worse messages. Emily's. Your sister said she can meet her Saturday. Make sure the folder is ready. My sister. Lena's. Her name glowing on the screen like poison. I opened the attached photo under that message. My world cracked. It was Daniel and Emily. Together. Her arms around him. His face close to hers. Laughing. But that wasn't the worst part. The background of the photo was my father's backyard. My father's house. The one he left to me. The one Daniel always said he didn't connect with emotionally. They had taken a picture together while touring it. Without me. Behind my back. My eyes dropped to the text under the photo. Emily's. Once the trust papers go through, we can list this one immediately. List this one. My father's house. My inheritance. A house they had no right to touch. I opened more messages. Emily's. The holding company is set. As long as she signs the last set, everything moves quietly. Daniel. She won't question it, she trusts me. Emily's. And your sister, she's still on our side, right? Daniel. She'll keep Myra busy. I covered my mouth with my hand to stop myself from making a sound. Sister. Husband. Affair partner. All of them playing roles in a script I didn't even know I was part of. I opened the email app next. There it was. An email from Emily to Daniel. The property lawyers said the wife is unlikely to fight if she believes the transfer is temporary for tax protection. Use that angle. My stomach turned. Another email. Once everything moves to the holding company, you'll have legal control even if she delays the separation. Separation. So they weren't just cheating. They were planning a divorce, timed with the inheritance transfer. Another email showed up. From Daniel to a lawyer I had never met. How soon after she signs can we assume beneficiary control? Beneficiary control. They wanted it all. Every cent. Every brick. Everything my father built and trusted me with. I locked the phone and sat on the cold bathroom floor. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a mistake. This was structured betrayal. Paperwork betrayal. Lawyer betrayal. A plan crafted for months. Maybe years. A plan I almost stepped into blindly. I looked at the hidden phone again. They thought I was blind. They thought I was loyal. They thought I was soft. They thought I would sign whatever they put in front of me. They thought wrong. I did not go downstairs right away. Daniel called up once, cheerful. Myra, coffee is ready. I flushed the toilet so it would sound normal, washed my hands, and stared at my reflection for 10 long seconds. Then I unlocked the door and walked down like nothing was wrong. He was standing by the counter in sweatpants and a t-shirt, scrolling his phone. His real phone. The one he left on the nightstand, the one I knew the password to, the one that suddenly felt like a decoy. Morning, I said, taking the mug he held out. Morning. He kissed my cheek, casual, like he had not just been exposed on another device upstairs. How did you sleep? He asked. Fine, I said, you? Yeah, a bit of a headache. Got a lot on at work this week. I nodded and took a sip of coffee to hide the way my jaw clenched. You have no idea, I thought. He talked about a client, about a possible work trip next month, about nothing that mattered. I watched him talk the way you watch a stranger on the train, observing, detached. When he left for work, he leaned in to kiss my forehead. Dinner together tonight, he asked. No lap. Top for me, I promise. Sure, I said. Text me if you will be late. He smiled like everything was fine and walked out of the door. The moment his car pulled away, I locked the front door and went back upstairs. The hidden phone went into my handbag, not to confront him with, not yet, to protect it, to keep it on me where he could not suddenly remember and come back for it. I sat at the dining table with my own laptop open. I read the messages again, slower this time. The words did not change. Your sister said she will distract her. Keep her on your side. She listens to you more than she listens to me. I thought my father's death had hurt more than anything else life could do to me. I was wrong. The idea that my sister was part of this made my chest ache in a way I did not know how to name. Lena and I were not the kind of sisters who called every day. We were different, busy, sometimes distant, but she was still my person in a way no one else was. She was the one who picked me up when I failed my driving test. The one who bought me cheap champagne when I got my first promotion. The one who stood next to me at the cemetery when we buried our father. And now she was the one sending messages about distracting me while my husband prepared to move my inheritance out of my reach. I stared at my phone, at her name in my contacts. I could have called right then. I screamed. Demanded an explanation. Instead, I messaged her in the most ordinary way I could think of. Hey, you busy later, could use a chat. She replied within a minute. Of course, everything okay? Not really, I typed. Can you come over tonight? Sure, 7. 7 is fine. I spent the day moving through tasks I did not remember doing. I answered emails. I sat on video calls for work. I even made a sandwich at some point, although I did not remember eating it. Every so often, I checked that the hidden phone was still in my bag. At 6:30, I changed into a clean jumper and jeans, something normal. Normal was important. Normal meant she would not suspect anything. At 6:58, I heard her car door slam. Lena walked in without knocking, the way she always did. "Hey," she said, shrugging off her coat. "Where is he?" "At the office," I said, "late." She rolled her eyes. "Of course he is. Men and their important meetings." She stepped forward and hugged me. It was a quick hug, but familiar. "How are you really?" she asked, pulling back to look at me. "You sounded off on text." I studied her face. She looked exactly like my sister. Same hazel eyes as mine. Same small line between her eyebrows. Same faint scar near her chin from the time we tried to climb the garden fence and she fell. "You remember when we were kids, and you told me you would punch anyone who hurt me?" I asked. She laughed. "Did someone at work annoy you again? Give me a name, I will find their LinkedIn and haunt them." The joke landed half right. I smiled, but my stomach turned. "Sit," I said. "Do you want tea?" "Wine," she said. "Definitely wine." I poured her a glass and sat opposite her at the kitchen table. "So," she said, "tell me." I chose my words carefully. "Daniel has been different the last few months," I said. "More distant, more controlling about money, pushing paperwork I do not fully understand." Lena's eyes darkened for a split second before she schooled her expression. "Well, that sounds familiar," she said. "Men get weird about finances after 40. Is he stressed about work?" "I thought you might know," I said lightly. "He said he talked to you about some of the legal stuff." Lena froze for half a breath. Then she shrugged. "We spoke a bit," she said. "He wanted advice about protecting the house in case, something happened. You know how many nightmare cases I see. Wives left with nothing because paperwork was a mess." My skin prickled. "I do not remember telling you about the last set of documents," I said. "The new trust, the ones he said you recommended." Her fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. It was so quick most people would miss it. I did not. "Did he say that?" she asked, forcing a light tone. "I just said you should both talk to someone professional. I have seen too many people rely on verbal promises." "Did you talk to the lawyer yourself?" I asked. She took a sip of wine. "Briefly," she said. "He wanted my view on property values and structures. You know me. I cannot resist an argument about equity." She smiled, but her eyes slid away for a second. There it was. The gap. The tiny space where the truth slipped through. "How much did he tell you about my accounts?" I asked, letting curiosity coat my words instead of accusation. Lena looked up sharply. "Your accounts," she repeated. "Yes," I said. "The investments Dad left. The condo, the life insurance. All the complicated, boring things I never paid attention to until recently." She exhaled, a small irritated sound. "Myra, you know I love you," she said. "But you are terrible with money. You have always been. Dad said it himself. You live in your own world. You trust people too easily. Daniel just does not want you to be exposed if something happens to him." Something inside me hardened. "He does not want me to be exposed," I repeated. She misread my tone. "Exactly," she said, warming to her role. "That is why I told him he needed to get you to sign things while things are calm. You do not do well under pressure. Better to arrange structures now, while you are still in a good place mentally." While you are still in a good place mentally. I heard the echo of one of the emails on the hidden phone. "If she becomes difficult, We can always raise capacity concerns. Myra, Lena continued, leaning forward. You know I am on your side. I always have been. If I thought for a second he was trying to screw you over, I would not help him. There it was in plain language. If I thought for a second he was trying to screw you over, I would not help him. Not I did not help him. Not I had nothing to do with this. I fiddled with the edge of my sleeve to stop my hands from shaking. What exactly did you help him with? I asked quietly. She bristled. Do not make it sound shady, she snapped. I put him in touch with a good lawyer. I reviewed some drafts. I suggested a holding company because you have too many separate assets floating around. Consolidation looks messy in court. She took another sip of wine, faster this time. You asked me for help years ago, she added. When Dad died, you said, Lena, I do not know what to do with all this. I stepped up. Now I am stepping up again. Stepping up. That is what she called steering my husband toward legal structures that quietly moved my inheritance into his control. I swallowed the words, burning in my throat. You have been talking to him a lot then, I said, more than I realized. She shrugged. He calls when he panics, she said. You know how he is, emotional, dramatic. He is terrified you will decide you do not need him and leave. I keep telling him to chill. That almost made me laugh. He was terrified I would leave. While he sat in bed texting his affair partner about listing my father's house. What about Emily? I asked, watching her face closely. Who? She asked too quickly. The estate agent he knows, I said. From that firm by the river, Emily Carter. Relief fluttered across her features. Oh, Emily, she said, relaxing. She is sharp, I trust her. I have done a couple of deals with her. Why? I remembered the photo. Emily and Daniel in my father's garden. Emily talking about listing my house once the trust was complete. Have you three met together? I asked. You, Daniel, and Emily. Lena frowned. Once, she said, coffee after a viewing. We were talking about portfolio strategy, diversifying. It was nothing sinister, Myra. You are making that face. What face? The face you make when you have been on the internet too long and think everything is a conspiracy, she said lightly. She laughed and reached across to squeeze my hand. I promise you, she said, no one is plotting against you. My heart pounded so loudly, I almost laughed at how wrong she was. I squeezed her hand back so she would not pull away. Lena, I said softly, if there was something I needed to know, you would tell me, right? She looked me straight in the eye. Always, she said. She was lying. The thing about growing up with someone is that you know their micro-expressions better than they do. Her left eyebrow twitched when she lied about exams. Her mouth tightened when she lied about boyfriends. And now, both things happened at once. She finished her wine and checked the time. I have to go, she said. I am showing a place at 9. Promise me you will not spiral. Let Daniel handle the boring legal stuff. That is what husbands are for. She stood up and kissed my forehead on her way out, exactly like Daniel had done that morning. I walked her to the door and watched her get into her car. When the street was empty again, I closed the door and leaned my forehead against it. My husband was cheating on me. My sister was helping him move my inheritance. They were both using the word protection while building a world where I own nothing. The betrayal did not hit me as a dramati. See blow. It settled in my bones like cold. On the table, her empty wine glass stood next to my untouched one. 2 glasses. 2 sisters. Only one of us knew what game we were really playing now. Daniel came home late that night. Not suspiciously late, just late enough to look normal. That was the dangerous part. His evil was wrapped in routine. I was sitting on the sofa with a blanket around my shoulders, a show playing on the TV that I wasn't actually watching. He walked in, dropped his keys in the bowl by the door, and smiled like nothing in the world was wrong. "Hey," he said softly. "Sorry I'm late, traffic was brutal." I kept my face calm. Neutral. Warm enough not to alarm him. "That's all right," I said. "Did you eat?" "Not yet," he said, walking toward me. "I thought we could order something." "Sure," I replied. In that moment, I felt something terrifying. I was watching him like prey. Every movement he made. The way his eyes flicked to my face, checking my emotional temperature. The way he relaxed when he saw no anger. No suspicion. He sat down beside me, close enough for his thigh to touch mine. Normally, that kind of intimacy would comfort me. Tonight, it made my skin tighten. "How was your day?" he asked. I turned my head and smiled gently. Quiet, I cleaned a bit, talked to Lena. His body stiffened barely, but I caught it. "Oh, how is she?" he asked casually. "She's fine," I said. "She came over for wine." He cleared his throat. "Did she say anything about the paperwork?" My pulse stayed steady. "No," I said, "we didn't talk about that." His shoulders relaxed again. He didn't know I had spent the entire evening pulling truth out of my sister, like threads from a sweater. If I had confronted her with proof, she might have cracked. But she would have warned him. And they would have buried everything before I could touch it. No, silence was my weapon. Silence was how you hunted predators. "I'm glad you two talked," he said. "You've always trusted her." I smiled back. Something sharp sat behind the expression, but he didn't see it. He didn't see anything anymore. Later that night, I pretended to be tired. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and slipped into bed. He climbed in beside me, scrolling his real phone for a few minutes before shutting the light off. "Love you," he murmured into the dark. For the first time in 14 years, I didn't say it back. A silence. Sharp. Powerful. He didn't notice. He was already half asleep. I lay awake for hours, feeling the weight of everything tightening around us. His betrayal. My sister's involvement. The hidden phone in my bag. The legal trap waiting to be activated. I wasn't scared anymore. That feeling had passed hours ago. What settled in its place was something much more dangerous. Clarity. The next morning, I woke up before him. I showered. Got dressed. Made coffee. Sat at the dining table with my laptop and documents spread out. When he came down, he smiled at the careful normalcy of it all. "You're up early," he said. "I have some things to sort," I replied. "Anything I can help with?" I looked at him, the man who was planning to erase me from my own life, and smiled softly. "No, Daniel," I said. "I can handle it." He kissed the top of my head, unaware that he was kissing the woman who was about to dismantle him piece by piece. He left for work. I closed my laptop, picked up my keys, and walked out the door. It was time to begin. Time to build the silence into something sharp enough to cut. Claire wasn't the naive wife anymore. Claire was the monster they created. And the monster was awake. I didn't drive to the office. I didn't drive to my sister's. I didn't even drive to the bank. I drove to a small beige building on the edge of downtown, the one place Daniel and Lena never expected me to go. A law firm. Not a friendly, soft-toned family law office. Not a collaborative divorce center. No. A firm that handled fraud, financial abuse, and asset theft. The kind of place people only walked into when something had gone horribly wrong, or when they were ready to win by any means necessary. The brass plaque on the door read, Davison, Shaw and Lee. Specialists in high-risk marital litigation. I stepped inside. A receptionist greeted me with a calm smile that somehow made the room feel colder. Appointment, she asked. Yes, I said, Claire Whitman, 10 o'clock. She nodded. Mr. Shaw is ready for you. Mr. Shaw. I already liked the sound of him. She guided me through a hallway lined with framed court victories. My stomach tightened, but not from fear. From focus. She opened a door to a glass-walled office. Inside sat a man in his early 50s, sleeves rolled to the elbows, silver in his hair, no-nonsense expression. Not friendly. Not warm. Exactly what I needed. He didn't stand. He didn't greet me with fake sympathy. He simply gestured to the chair across from him. Claire, he said, let's begin. His voice was low, steady, and unsettlingly calm, like he had heard every nightmare scenario imaginable. I sat down and placed my bag on the floor, the hidden phone inside it feeling heavier than metal. He studied me for 3 seconds, long enough to read how injured I was, how controlled I was acting, and how determined I had become. What did he do? He asked. Just that. 4 words. And those 4 words cracked open everything inside me. I took a steady breath. He's cheating, I said, and he's trying to steal my inheritance. Mr. Shaw didn't blink. Tell me everything, he said. So I did. Slowly. Exactly. Calmly. The hidden phone. The messages. The trust paperwork. The suspicious meetings. The involvement of my sister. The planned transfer of my father's house. He didn't interrupt once. Didn't gasp. Didn't react. He only wrote notes with the precision of a man who liked details more than emotions. When I finished, he set the pen down. Not gently. Deliberately. Claire, he said, this is not a messy marriage. He leaned back. This is premeditated financial abuse. The words hit the air like a verdict. Not dramatic. Just true. And your husband, he continued, didn't plan this alone. He had collaborators. You're dealing with a coordinated attempt to separate you from your legally owned assets. I swallowed. So what do I do? He interlocked his fingers. You stay quiet, he said. You stay normal. You stay predictable. You keep them comfortable. He leaned forward. And we build the trap. My pulse steadied. What's the first step? He opened a folder, already labeled with my name. Step 1, he said, we freeze your joint accounts, quietly, legally, so when he tries to drain them he can't. Step 2, he continued, we notify the bank that any trust transfer attempts require your signature and your physical presence. That will stop the inheritance theft. My hands tightened on the chair. What about my sister? He paused. We gather evidence, he said, but we don't confront her, not yet. He tapped the table. People under pressure make mistakes. Let her make them. I nodded slowly. And the phone. Bring it out, he said. And now. I placed it on the table. His eyebrows raised just slightly, impressed. Locked. Yes. That won't matter, he said, pulling out a small forensic device from his drawer. This can extract everything without triggering a wipe. He connected the phone. The screen lit up. Messages. Emails. Photos. Call logs. All copied into his system within minutes. He unplugged the device and slid the phone back to me. Keep it hidden, he said. It's your strongest piece of evidence, but if he discovers it's missing, the entire case collapses. Understood. Understood, I whispered. He folded his hands again. Claire, they think you're unaware. They think you're passive. They think you're soft. His voice sharpened. Use that, let them stay stupid. A slow, dangerous calm settled over me. So what happens next? I asked. He smiled, a small, cold curve of satisfaction. Next, he said, we take away everything they plan to steal. And then, he added, we take more. I exhaled, long and steady. The fear I had carried for days drained out of me like someone had opened a valve. Daniel had planned a future where I owned nothing. Lena had helped him structure it. Emily was waiting to profit from it. But now I wasn't alone. I had a lawyer whose reputation was built on burying men like my husband. I stood to leave. He shook my hand, firm and steady. Claire, he said, this ends with you winning. Not surviving, winning. I walked out of the office with one thought repeating in my mind. Let them think I'm naive. Let them think I'm slow. Let them think I'm broken. Because they were about to learn what happens when the quiet one finally decides to fight. When I left Mr. Shaw's office, the city felt different. Quieter. Sharper. Like every building and every streetlight knew a secret that Daniel and Lena didn't. I wasn't the hunted one anymore. I was hunting. I drove home with the windows cracked just enough to feel the cold air on my face, grounding, clarifying. The hidden phone stayed zipped inside my handbag, almost humming with the weight of what it held. Today had changed everything. The moment I walked into the house, I placed my keys on the table, took a slow breath, and reminded myself of Mr. Shaw's instructions. Stay quiet. Stay predictable. Stay harmless. Let them believe exactly what they want to believe, that I was still the trusting wife they could play like a puppet. I made a pot of tea, lit a candle, and sat at the kitchen counter scrolling through recipes. A scene so ordinary, so boring, that if Daniel walked in right now, he would kiss my cheek and thank God I hadn't figured out a thing. That was the goal. The trap only works when the prey relaxes. My phone buzzed. Daniel. Daniel stuck in traffic, home soon, want tea. Hi. I stared at the message. My husband. Messaging me about dinner. While planning to rob me blind. Me Thai sounds good, get the usual. Another buzz. Daniel perfect, love you. I typed the hardest 2 words of the day. Me love you too. If lies had weight, that text would have crushed the screen. But the game was just beginning. At exactly 7:10 p.m., Lena texted me as well. Lena, you good, thinking about you today. Thinking about me. Thinking about my assets. Thinking about the last document she still needed me to sign. Me, I'm okay, just tired, will sleep early. Lena, good, don't stress about anything. let Daniel deal with the pressure. Pressure. She meant me. Getting me to sign without questions was the pressure. My hand tightened around the phone. I forced myself to breathe. Soon, they wouldn't be pressuring me. They'd be explaining themselves to a judge. But for now, silence. Daniel came home at 7:40 with takeout. He smiled, kissed my cheek, and unloaded the bags like a man who deserved applause for buying dinner. I watched him set the table, his movements calm, rehearsed, familiar. If I didn't know what I knew, I would have believed this was care. We ate like a normal married couple. He talked about work. I nodded and asked questions. He told a stupid joke about his coworker. I laughed. Every performed emotion felt like another stitch in the net I was weaving. When he finished eating, he wiped his mouth with a napkin and cleared his throat. So, he said carefully, do you have time tomorrow morning? I want to go over some financial stuff, just routine things before tax season. My heart stayed steady. This was it. He was accelerating the plan. He needed my signature. He was getting nervous. I looked up from my plate, giving him the most innocent expression I could form. Sure, I said softly, whatever you need. Relief washed over his face like warm sunlight. He reached out, touched my hand, and smiled. I knew I could count on you, he said. I smiled back. If only he knew. That night, I waited until he fell asleep, the rhythmic breathing of a man who believed the world was firmly under his control. I slipped quietly out of bed, sat at the vanity, and turned on the lowest lamp. I pulled the hidden phone out of my bag and unlocked it again with the new passcode Mr. Shaw had bypassed. I scrolled through messages, taking screenshots of every conversation about the trust, every mention of my sister, every message from the affair partner, every timeline reference, every plan involving my inheritance, every slip-up that revealed their coordination. I backed up everything again. Twice. Daniel shifted in his sleep, and I froze, breath caught. He mumbled something, rolled over, and went still again. I resumed copying. Quietly, efficiently, with the patience of someone who finally understood the value of caution. An hour later, I slid back into bed. Daniel instinctively reached for me in his sleep, arm wrapping over my waist. Once that gesture meant safety. Now it felt like a rope. A claim. A lie. But I didn't move. Let him believe I was still his. Let him believe he still had time. Tomorrow, I would give him exactly what he wanted. A signing meeting. Except the signing wouldn't happen. But the trap. The trap would finally close. Daniel woke before I did the next morning. He was already showered and dressed in the navy shirt he wore whenever he wanted to look professional but harmless. The shirt he used for meetings where he needed people to trust him. The shirt he wore the day we closed on our house. I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes like I had no idea that today would change everything for him. Morning, he said gently. I brewed coffee, thought we could go over those documents once you're awake. I nodded with a tired smile. Just give me 10 minutes. He nodded back, relieved. He truly believed I had no idea what he was planning. When I came downstairs, he was at the table with a folder open and 2 pens ready. His entire face lit up when he saw me. There you are, he said, ready. I glanced at the folder. So these are the papers Emily said we should finalize. He blinked. It was half a second, but enough. Who? He asked too quickly. I smiled gently. I meant the financial advisor, I said. You know, the one your coworker recommended. He relaxed again, not realizing I'd just tested him. Right, he said. Yes, these are just the trust updates. Trust updates. The final form that would transfer my father's house into his control. He was so proud of himself, so close, so confident. I picked up the folder and flipped through the pages slowly. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind 100 times. He leaned forward. Everything look okay? He asked. I placed the folder down calmly. It looks fine, I said, but I think it's better if we sign these with a lawyer present. His smile froze. Then he forced a laugh. Oh, Claire, we don't need that. This is just paperwork. I know, I said, but after W. Hat happened with Dad's estate. I promised myself I'd never sign anything important without a legal witness. Another perfectly reasonable lie. He sat back slowly. Honey, this is really unnecessary. I know, I repeated softly, but it makes me feel better. His jaw worked once. Twice. Then he nodded with a tight smile. Fine, if it makes you feel safe. I stood and grabbed my coat. We can go now. And now. His voice cracked. Yes, I said, the lawyer I found takes walk-ins. He blinked again. You already found one. Yes, I said, picking up my keys. Let's go. His face drained of color just slightly. But he forced himself to breathe normally. All right, he said, if that's what you need. It was exactly what I needed. The drive was silent. Daniel kept glancing at me like he was trying to read my mind, but he didn't know what to look for. I wasn't angry. I wasn't emotional. I wasn't even pretending anymore. I was empty silence wrapped in control. When we arrived, I parked in front of the beige building. Daniel stared at the sign. Davison, Shaw and Lee. Marital litigation and financial protection. His mouth actually fell open. We are not going in there, he said. I smiled calmly. You said it was simple paperwork. If it is, there's nothing to worry about. He swallowed hard. Claire, wait, this is overkill, this is insane. Why did you pick this place? Because they specialize in marriage assets, I said. A simple, clean sentence. He stared at me like he suddenly didn't recognize the woman sitting beside him. I opened the door and stepped out. He didn't move for 3 full seconds. Then he followed. Inside, the receptionist greeted us warmly. Hi, Claire, Mr. Shaw is ready for you. Daniel whipped his head toward me. You've been here before. Yes, I said. That was the moment he knew something was wrong. Terribly wrong. But it was too late. We walked into the office. Mr. Shaw stood, nodded politely, and gestured to 2 chairs. Daniel, he said, please have a seat. Daniel hovered, unsure if he should run or sit. Mr. Shaw placed a thick folder on the table. Since you're here to finalize trust documents, he said, I'd like to review your previous communications first. Daniel's voice broke completely. What communications? Mr. Shaw opened the folder. Inside were printed messages. Photos. Emails. Plans. Timelines. Screenshots from the hidden phone. Everything. Daniel stared at the pages. Then he looked at me. His face drained. His lips trembled. He stopped breathing for 2 full seconds. Claire, he whispered, you don't understand. These are not what they look like. They look like an affair, Mr. Shaw said. They look like fraud. They look like coordinated asset theft. Daniel's legs gave out, and he fell into the chair behind him. Please, he said, voice cracking. I can explain. Mr. Shaw ignored him. He turned to me instead. Claire, he said, based on all collected evidence, we are filing for protective injunctions and full asset retention. You will keep the house. You will keep your inheritance. You will freeze the accounts he attempted to move. Daniel's head snapped up. What? He choked. No, that house is ours. She can't do that, she can't, Emily said. He stopped. He heard his own mistake. Mr. Shaw wrote something down. Thank you, Daniel, he said. We will add that to the file. Daniel stood up, panicked. Claire, please, just listen to me. I was going to explain everything. I swear I wasn't going to go through with it. You already did, I said softly. I just found it before you finished. He looked like I had slapped him. I love you, he whispered. A silence. Cold. Final. No, I said, you loved the things I had, not me. He dropped to his knees. Literally. On the floor. In front of my lawyer. Please, Claire, please don't do this, please. Mr. Shaw closed the folder. This meeting is over, he said. Our next contact will be through formal court communication. I stood. Daniel reached for my hand. I stepped back. He froze. Something inside him broke. You could see it in his face. The moment he realized the life he built on lies had collapsed. Completely. Instantly. And I didn't even have to raise my voice. I walked out of the office. Daniel stayed kneeling on the floor. The first piece of the trap had closed. But the destruction had only started. Daniel did not return to the car with me. He stayed behind in Mr. Shaw's office, surrounded by the pieces of his own plan, shredded and laid out in legal order. A blueprint of betrayal that now belonged to me. I drove home alone. Not shaken. Not angry. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that happens right before a building collapses. When I pulled into our driveway, I sat still for a long moment. 14 years of marriage. 14 years of compromise. 14 years of believing that loyalty meant safety. Daniel had taken that belief and turned it into a weapon. Now I was turning it back on him. That evening, my phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from Daniel. Calls. Voicemails. He tried pleading first. Daniel, Claire, please, I am begging you, call me. Then bargaining. Daniel, we can fix this, please. The lawyer twisted everything. Then anger. Daniel, how could you do this to me after everything? Then desperation. Daniel, I am outside, please open it. I didn't open. I didn't respond. I documented every message. Evidence. When his calls finally stopped, I stood from the couch and walked through the house slowly, touching the objects that would have been stolen from me. The photo frames. My father's leather-bound books. The vase he gave me on my 30th birthday. The deeds stored in my safe. This house was not Daniel's victory. It was his funeral. The next morning, Daniel came to the door again. Not banging. Not yelling. He stood there with swollen eyes and a face that had lost all its confidence. "Claire," he whispered through the door, "please let me talk." I spoke through the locked wood. "Daniel, do not come here again without contacting your lawyer. Any communication outside legal channels will be documented as harassment." There was a pause. A long one. Then a broken voice. "I never meant to hurt you." I closed my eyes. "Yes," I said, "you did." He left the porch slowly, shoulders slumped, walking like a man who had aged 10 years in a single night. 2 days later, the real destruction began. Mr. Shaw called me. "Claire," he said, "the forensic audit is back. It is worse than we expected." "Worse?" "Explain," I said. "Your husband," he continued, "has been redirecting marital funds into a shell account tied to CR Holdings." I recognized the name instantly. The company Emily worked with. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said calmly, "your husband has attempted to move joint funds without your knowledge or consent. That is marital fraud. It is also financial abuse." He shuffled papers. "And there is more." I sat straighter. "Your sister has received multiple payments, labeled as consulting fees, tied to your trust restructuring." There it was. The nail in her coffin. "She cannot claim she was only helping," he continued. "The transactions make it clear she benefited from your husband's plan. She participated knowingly." My breath tightened. "In the house?" I asked. Mr. Shaw paused before answering. "You will get it," he said, "completely, no negotiation." I closed my eyes in relief. "And Daniel?" I asked. "He will lose any claim he thinks he has. The judge will not tolerate this level of deceit." He continued. "We are filing injunctions and a petition for asset retention. That includes your father's investments." Everything was falling into place. But the most important piece was still missing. "What about Emily?" I asked. Mr. Shaw let out a slow exhale. "The investigator found her involvement too. She assisted, provided valuation reports, offered strategic advice. She is deeply tied into this." "Can she be charged?" I whispered. "Oh yes," he said, "and she will be." A cold calm spread through my chest. "Good," I said. "I want everything in writing." "You will have it by tonight." 2 weeks later, we stood in the courtroom. Me beside Mr. Shaw. Daniel beside his own lawyer. Emily at the back, arms folded tightly. And my sister Lena, pale as paper, avoiding my eyes. The judge began reading through the documents. Daniel shifted in his seat, like a boy caught stealing food from a fridge. The judge looked at him. "You attempted to gain control of your wife's inheritance without her consent." Daniel's mouth opened. "Your Honor, that is not what I—" The judge raised a hand. "Do not lie to this court. The evidence is extensive." Daniel froze. The judge continued. "You coordinated with a real estate agent to appraise and prepare the sale of a property that did not belong to you." He swallowed. "You moved funds into a hidden shell account." He stared at the floor. "And you attempted to create legal structures to remove your wife's access to her own assets in the event of separation." Daniel blinked rapidly, tears forming. "Your Honor, I was confused, I was stressed. I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were thinking clearly enough to betray her," the judge said sharply. Lena squeezed her eyes shut. Emily shifted uncomfortably. The judge picked up the letter Daniel wrote to Emily. "To quote your own words," the judge read, Once she signs, we can list the property immediately. Daniel covered his face with his hands. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Whitman, do you intend to proceed with full asset retention? I nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Very well. The judge slammed the stamp onto the document. Your husband will leave with nothing from your inheritance, nothing from your property, nothing from the accounts he attempted to access. Daniel sobbed into his hands. The judge added one more sentence. You will not destroy her financially, but you have destroyed yourself. Silence filled the courtroom. That was the exact moment Daniel broke. When the hearing ended, he tried to approach me. Claire, he whispered, voice cracking, please don't do this, you're ending my life. I stepped back calmly. You ended this, I said, the day you tried to end mine. He reached toward me, but the bailiff placed a hand on his shoulder. I walked past him, straight-backed and steady. His life burned behind me. Mine was just beginning. The courtroom was colder the second time. Not physically. Emotionally. You could feel it. The kind of cold that comes when truth is no longer a rumor, but a documented weapon. I walked in with steady steps, Mr. Shaw beside me, holding a folder so thick it looked like it could break the table. Across the room, Daniel sat hunched forward. Shoulders curled. Hands clasped tight between his knees. Beside him, his lawyer whispered urgently, as if coaching a guilty child before confession. Behind them sat two women. Emily's. And my sister, Lena. Emily wore a stiff blazer, her lips pressed thin, her eyes darting toward the door like she wanted to be anywhere but here. Lena looked worse. Her makeup couldn't hide how sick she looked. She kept rubbing her hands together, staring at the floor. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The moment we sat, the judge spoke. We are here to finalize findings in the case of attempted marital fraud, asset manipulation, and premeditated financial abuse. The words alone made Daniel's head sink even lower. Mr. Shaw stood, sliding the top document forward. Your Honor, we have compiled all requested communications and financial records as instructed. The judge nodded. Proceed. Mr. Shaw walked to the center of the room and placed pages onto the evidence table. Not dramatically. Just precisely. Like laying out a blueprint of someone's downfall. These, he said, are the emails between Mr. Whitman and Ms. Emily Carter. Here he discusses controlling his wife's inheritance and planning a property transfer without consent. The judge flipped through them slowly. Daniel stared at his lap, face drained. These, Mr. Shaw continued, are the texts from Ms. Lena Brooks sent to Ms. Carter, confirming her involvement in distracting the wife while documents were prepared. Lena's breath hitched so loudly the whole courtroom heard it. The judge looked up at her. Ms. Brooks, do you dispute these messages? Lena shook her head, lips trembling. No, Your Honors. Her voice cracked. I didn't think she'd ever find out. The judge's stare was ice. That does not make it less illegal. Emily shifted in her seat, crossing her arms defensively. Mr. Shaw continued, voice steady. These are the financial transfers made to the shell company CR Holdings, each tied to the property scam. The judge studied the numbers. This is a clear funneling pattern, he concluded, deliberate and concealed. Daniel swallowed hard. His lawyer leaned toward him. Say something, he whispered. So Daniel stood. Slowly. Timidly. Your honors. He cleared his throat. I admit I made mistakes. He looked around, as if searching for sympathy. None came. I wasn't trying to steal, I was trying to secure our future. My wife was, she didn't understand the financial side of things. I only did what I thought was best. The judge raised an eyebrow. And the affair. Daniel froze. And the plan to take ownership of a house that was never yours. The judge flipped to a specific line. You literally wrote, once she signs, we list the house immediately. Daniel's face turned red. It was just. He stumbled over the words. It wasn't serious. I wasn't going to go through with it. The judge closed the file. Mr. Whitman, he said slowly, the evidence proves otherwise. Then he turned his gaze toward Emily. Ms. Carter, stand. Emily stood stiffly, chin raised but eyes terrified. You knowingly participated in the fraudulent attempt to seize property that did not belong to you. You provided valuations and advice that would have benefited you financially. Emily swallowed. Your real estate license will be reviewed by the state board. I am forwarding all documents to the licensing commission immediately. You will not practice until their investigation concludes. Emily's knees wobbled. She sat down shakily. Next, the judge addressed Lena. Ms. Brooks. She stood, trembling. You betrayed your own sister for personal gain. You assisted in a coordinated attempt to remove her financial freedom. Lena covered her face with her hands. I'm so sorry. The judge didn't soften. I am referring your involvement to the Financial Crimes Unit. Your actions were not only unethical, but criminal. Lena sobbed. Silently. Brokenly. Daniel watched her fall apart and whispered something desperate under his breath. No one listened. Finally, the judge turned to me. Mrs. Whitman, after reviewing all evidence, this court rules the following. 1. You retain full ownership of your father's house. Daniel's shoulders collapsed. 2. You retain full ownership of all inherited investments and accounts. Lena let out a shaky exhale, as if her last hope had just died. 3. You retain 70% of joint marital assets. Daniel's head dropped to the table. 4. Mr. Whitman will pay all legal fees, including your counsel S. A silence. Pure silence. 5. The attempted property scam and financial manipulation will remain on public record as an official judicial finding. Daniel looked up, eyes wild. Please, he whispered, voice breaking. This will ruin me. The judge leaned back. That is what happens when a man tries to ruin his wife. Daniel covered his face with shaking hands. Emily stared straight ahead, eyes glossy. Lena sobbed harder. The judge picked up the final stamp. You plan to leave your wife with nothing. Because of that, you will leave this courtroom with nothing. A stamp. Echo. Finality. I closed my eyes. Not from relief. From peace. Because justice didn't shout that day. It whispered. A quiet. A cold. Perfect. The house was quiet again. But for the first time in months, the quiet didn't feel like a threat. It felt like breathing room. I stood in the doorway of my father's house. The one they tried to take. The one they walked through behind my back. The one they planned to sell before I even knew what they were doing. Now it belonged to me more than ever. Not because of inheritance, but because of survival. I walked through each room slowly. The living room. The kitchen. The small office my father used to work in every night. Everything looked the same. Yet everything felt different. This was no longer a space filled with memories of what was lost. It was a space ready for what came next. I stood by the window, the morning light spilling in. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like someone's wife, someone's sister, someone's target. I felt like myself. A calm, a steady, unapologetically strong. People always assume the loud ones are powerful. But I learned something different. Quiet people are the ones you should fear. Quiet people watch. Quiet people understand patterns. Quiet people see motives hidden between sentences. Quiet people don't start wars. They end them. I brewed a cup of tea and stepped onto the porch. The same porch I'd sat on as a teenager, while Dad gave advice I wasn't old enough to appreciate. He used to say, "Strength doesn't always roar, sometimes it whispers, not this time." I whispered exactly that the day Daniel walked out. And the universe listened. I took a long sip of tea, letting the warmth settle in. My life had shifted. Not shattered. Shifted. I'd lost a husband. And a sister. But what I gained was far more valuable. My clarity. My dignity. My future. I didn't stalk Daniel's social media. I didn't check his location. I didn't ask anyone about him. When you finally see someone's true character, you stop wondering how they're doing. You just feel relieved they're no longer doing it near you. A week after the court ruling, I passed by the mirror on my way out the door. I paused. Not to fix my hair, but because I finally recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes weren't sad anymore. They were sharp. Awake. Done apologizing for taking up space in her own story. I whispered to her reflection, "You made it." And I meant it. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Lena. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Some doors aren't meant to be reopened. No matter who's knocking. I walked down the steps of the house I fought so fiercely to protect. The air felt clearer. Lighter. Like the world had been holding its breath with me and finally exhaled. I didn't win because I destroyed them. I won because I rebuilt myself. And that's the thing no one teaches you. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is not ruining someone else's life. It's rebuilding yours so completely that they can no longer recognize the woman they once thought was easy to break.